So there's been some convulsions, and indeed the patient is in danger, but surely uh, thinking or questioning or um, whatever it is still ongoing. The following is, in a certain sense, a commentary on what I just said. The fragiliser, or the making fragile of our thinking, is like the deconstruction mentioned by Heidegger. The using our history, which is what we are, to try to orient ourselves and swim towards, from buoy to buoy, from one thought to another, from a attempt to conceptualize something to something else, uh, to where we should wish to be in order to guide ourselves as best as possible. In the let's take a site which is let's call it a region, which gives us some determination, or it puts a limit on things, thereby defining them, as a surveyor puts lines around and measures the property or so, which is also something which is somehow connected to Thales, because he knew, I think he's in one of the small passages mentioned to him, it's something about his knowledge in that art of surveying was mentioned. But it's in any case, it's something sort of, you think of the notion of what is property, then you get a different answer in the pneumatico lenges version, where property is connected to primordial religion, as we call it, with our generic word that we have now that we use to cover so many things. But once this specific sense of the Aertes and the which are a kind of spirit supposed to be around a hearth fire, which were believed, so far as I understand it, to point back to the literal first ancestor of a family, the grandfather to grandfather, etc. There must be a first ancestor. So this was a holy practice, and it was at the center of the reason such a thing as property came into existence, because you had to keep the rites, the liturgy, to use an unhistorical word there, going. The other notion of property we get, which is a late property notion from this sort of, not an abyss, but like if the whole sea were um, somehow made on metaphor into the universe. This is Rousseau, somehow has had a great sort of bent all Western European thinking, going back to Athens and Jerusalem, whereas he's brought in his notion of property in a major way, and said somebody first drew a line on the ground, and that was a terrible rascal. And but anyway, that got society going. And then there's questions of the people that came before who were happy, according to the Rousseau version and the popular presentation of it, against the Hobbes version. And then after the social contract is not signed, so actually that's a criticism I should just interject here. Rousseau doesn't say originally the social contract was signed. It's only now that we can sign it, because we've seen the break between this first rascal who drew that line in the ground and started out property, and thereby started the nomos in some sense. So this word in the first sentence of Aristotle, which is is translated as desires sometimes, translated variously. Translations are supposed always to be interpretations, according to Heidegger, which makes Heidegger in a certain sense in league with Nietzsche, who speaks of only the interpretations. But we don't know if we're moving here from Tatsache, or Tatsache is the word that's usually translated as fact, out of German, or if we're going from phenomena. Phenomena is somehow the same word in quite a few languages. Somehow it survives the move, usually, at least. I suppose it survives it's just a transliteration. It doesn't need a change in the word so much. Maybe because I suppose because phenomena only originates out of Greek, and then it goes to Latin, which is a very closely related language, and then it goes to the other languages. So in a way, it's more of an word than words that have independent springs, as it were, like fact and Tatsache, which I think are unrelated in their history. So this sense of this beginning statement at the beginning of philosophy, which seems to guide it and links to what I said at the very beginning, where I'm trying to say we don't know what we say we're going towards knowledge, but do we know what knowledge means? So in this first statement, the first sentence we call it, it's not punctuated that way in the original, but in the first sentence in the translation, is it not punctuated that way? There is some punctuation. I'm not sure about that. But in any case, that all men, or some form of the word anthropos, I think. I'm not sure if it specifically means all males. It just means all humans, anthropos, in some form of that. Maybe it could be translated all humans desire, or in some form of the word that's used in the Greek, reach out for, which brings me to this question about why is the ready to hand the ready to hand? Why is the hand involved? Why is touch seems to be involved? Reach out for. And it's linked to words like recto, and words that have to do with going straight, like the law. Not being crooked, following the canon or the right reason, or recto, or rego, or something like regulation. Ultimately, these words are linked to a metaphor on touch. So that's interesting. Is all language poetic, ultimately? Because in order to speak about the desiring or the reaching out for, we link it in order to speak about doing right. It's also linked to the English word right, which I think is connected to the Latin. The right hand rather than left hand. So is all our language poetic in its origin? In other words, it's metaphoric. Now, metaphoric and poetic may not be exactly the same thing. Mishima denies to be poetic, but he's obviously has the genius of the metaphor, for instance. And what they're talking about is reaching out towards a word which is some form of the word idea. All humans desire or reach out to know, but the know is the word that means the look of, the idea. So in moving into this Fragiliser, or breaking down of a supposed voyage to, is it a voyage? Is it a journey? Maybe if it's Rousseauian, it's a voyage. It's some kind of break in things. Is it a journey? Is it like the Numa de Calenge's version of the origin of property, or is it like this perhaps later, but perhaps more important version of the origin of property from Rousseau. Do those two origins of the notion of property, when juxtaposed, tell us something about what we're doing, how we're making things intelligible, generally speaking? I mean, certainly one could see if all the schools were teaching the pneumatical lenses version, property comes from the hearth and from the cult of the ancestors. That would generally dominate. People would believe that. There would be political groups that were devoted to upholding that alongside any other things they were doing. It would be impregnable, just as any political group with the center of gravity becomes, won't listen, right? That's what the philosophy is supposed to do, is first, if people break away from the political groups and then they start trying to think by themselves, they get into trouble all the time because they can't remain consistent with themselves. And then philosophy is first trying to make you consistent with yourself, and then it branches towards rhetoric, which is the ability to bring the evil political groups who are trapped in their tightly coiled centers of gravity into a position where they'll listen a little bit, because you learn the tricks where they like certain striking examples. Maybe there's a prejudice, as there are in the universities today, towards things that are very clear and easily understood at once, at least by the community that's memorized subject matter, say, for instance, of analytic philosophy. They don't like things that go away towards Socrates, towards questioning what words mean, towards asking what is the genuine meaning, towards corruption of the simple unity of the political groups. So I want to try to show more, as in what I hope to do here is more what thinking is, in contradistinction to the collection of information and memorization. But these attempts and sorties, which perhaps can stumble on cogencies, things that are cogent to Dasein. I don't say cogent to the mind, cogent to Dasein, that have not been trod upon previously.